acting all high and mighty over a mere $3,000.
Ever since our marriage, I've single-handedly been paying a monthly mortgage of $3,000. But my husband, with just one sentence, completely dismissed my efforts. This happened during one of our regular family meetings. Suddenly, my husband, Brian, slammed the table and stood up. His mother, sitting next to him, followed suit.
A parasite who doesn't even do housework should just leave.
Both were visibly furious, and it seemed impossible to have a reasonable discussion or talk about future improvements. They didn't even seem remorseful about the past. So, to both of them, I just smiled and replied, "Yes, I'd be delighted to." Brian and I were about to celebrate our third wedding anniversary. We both worked and everything went smoothly up until our marriage. Originally, Brian lived with his mother, but upon getting married, we decided to buy a condo. "Are you sure your mom will be okay alone in the house, now that you're moving out with me?"
She has my dad's inheritance and her pension. Of course, I'll visit her from time to time.
While I felt slightly guilty about his mother, living alone with Brian was more appealing, so I indulged in his assurances. Initially, we planned to split all expenses, but Brian proposed a different arrangement.
I was thinking, splitting everything might be tough. So how about you just pay the $3,000 mortgage into my account every month?
What do you mean?
All other living expenses will be paid from our shared account.
I hesitated at first, but the shared account would cover dining out, medical expenses, travel, and also savings for children and the future. So I gratefully accepted his proposal, which seemed to put more burden on him. Due to our busy work schedules, we spent little time together. We decided to hold regular family meetings and made decisions about vacations during these sessions. However, about a year into our marriage, Brian suddenly stopped contributing to the shared account. At first, I thought he might have forgotten, but after 2 months, there was still no deposit. As our family meeting day arrived, I brought it up. "Brian, have you forgotten to put money into the shared account for the past few months?"
Oh, right. I'll make a lump sum deposit soon. So hang in there for a bit.
"But you haven't deposited for 3 months now, and I've been covering for you. We're even dipping into our savings." Despite my request for him to resume his contributions, Brian was reluctant.
Since you're living in a house under my name, if you're so upset about not contributing a little to the living expenses, maybe it's you who should leave.
Where's this coming from? You just bought new golf equipment and a car. It's not like you're out of money.
That's not the case.
Then what's going on? It's not like you, and I'm worried. But then I was shocked by his response. Brian had quit his job around the time he stopped contributing to the living expenses. As we discussed this, he became more aggressive.
A company that promotes less intelligent people over me is not worth my time.
What about your next job?
I'm talented. I'll get a good job in no time.
But it's been 3 months. Maybe you should lower your expectations a bit.
I can't do that. I will get back at my old company by joining a renowned one.
But we need your contribution to the living expenses.
You work too. You can cover it until I find a new job.
As he normally has a high pride, I didn't expect he'd refuse to get a new job to this extent. I decided to be patient until he found a new job. "Please find a job soon."
But make sure you don't forget to deposit the $3,000 mortgage into my account every month. For a housewife who doesn't even do proper housework, it's like you're just leeching off.
His words pierced my heart. I realized for the first time that he could hurt someone without any guilt. Despite my efforts to persuade him to work during our family meetings, he would grumble instead, never making an effort to find a job. "There are no good companies. None of them suit me," he'd say. Recently, after a hard day's work, he said an unbelievable statement.
Since I'm letting you live in my house, and you're working, maybe it's not a problem if I don't work and you cover the living expenses.
He said that laughingly, but his eyes didn't seem to be joking. A year passed without Brian finding a job. When I came home, I found the hallway stacked with boxes. Panicked, I asked Brian, who had been cooped up at home, what was going on.
It seems hard for Mom to live alone, so I decided to let her stay here. Looks like she can manage without me since I moved out. It's only natural to take care of her.
What? I wasn't informed about this.
This is my house, so I don't need to consult you. You should realize that you're just staying here.
Dumbfounded by his logic, I hoped his attitude would change once his mother, Susan, arrived. A few days later, after working overtime, I returned home to find Susan lounging as if she owned the place.
Oh, the wife who doesn't even do housework is back late.
She greeted me, her first words full of sarcasm. She constantly threw snide remarks. Once, when Brian complained about our condo being smaller than his childhood home, she said,
If it weren't for someone who can't even manage the house, Brian could have relaxed at my place.
Another time, when I checked with Brian about the rapidly depleting shared account.
You don't do housework, so at least let us eat good food. That's why Brian has no motivation to work. It's really greedy of you to even talk about Brian's account money.
Since Brian stopped contributing, I had been putting extra money into the shared account to cover utilities. But after this incident, I only deposited the exact amount needed. First of all, Susan has always been overly indulgent with her son Brian, believing everything he says is right. Susan, in her mind, perceived me as a bad wife who demands living expenses from her husband despite not doing housework and not appreciating living in his house. Brian still didn't find a job even after Susan moved in. Instead, they often went out, spending more money and even taking loans after I reduced my contributions. Susan acted as if she was doing housework, but in reality, she relied on a cleaning robot and only washed clothes for herself and Brian, not even the towels. Meals were usually takeout or pre-made. 3 months passed. I kept paying both the living expenses and the mortgage. Finally reaching my limit with Brian and Susan, the day of our family meeting arrived. I started by distributing a document I had prepared. It detailed our financial transactions over the past few months. If you look at the expenses over the last 3 months, it's clear from the documents that our current income makes sustaining our lifestyle difficult.
What's the point of showing off with such documents?
I just want a positive discussion about how we move forward.
I get it, you know. Just bear with it while Mom gets used to living here.
Don't act all high and mighty just because it's convenient now.
Brian, for the past 3 months, I've been paying all the rent and living expenses. Don't you think that's unfair? Brian, infuriated, slammed the table and stood up.
all high and mighty over just $3,000. Who do you think you are? I'll pay when I get a job.
The house is in my son's name, and the mortgage is deducted from his account. Whatever you contribute is essentially his money.
If you hate it so much, then leave my house. I'm talented. I don't need you. Mom can take care of the house. Yeah, parasites who don't do housework should leave.
Realizing any further discussion was futile, I gave up trying to reason with them. Smiling, I replied, "Yes, I'd be delighted to." This decision felt right. I recognized that I had longed for this separation. Brian was stunned by my genuine smile, something he hadn't seen in 2 years. "Then please sign this."
What's this? Why do you have it?
"You said if I didn't like it, I could leave, so I got this ready." I showed him the divorce papers. He was confused, but his mother, Susan, could hardly hide her glee. Urged by Susan, Brian reluctantly filled out the divorce papers. As he did, I mentally planned my move and arranged for a moving company, then took the completed papers from him. "I'll be out by the end of the month, so please be present on the moving day."
If you're leaving, that's an easy request.
She was unusually cheerful at the prospect. "Once I've moved, I'll file the divorce papers myself, so don't worry."
Well, at least you're useful for something. Go ahead then.
Ignoring Brian's attempts to say something, I pushed the conversation forward with an enthusiastic Susan.
This will be refreshing.
I agreed with her last remark as I left the room. On moving day, I had the movers take out all my belongings and the furniture I had bought. As they removed almost every appliance in the house, Susan confronted me.
How much are you taking? Are you out of your mind?
"I bought everything here myself, and the receipts are all in my name. I'm only taking what's legally mine."
So what? Everything in this house is obviously mine.
"If this is your house because it's in your name, then my furniture is mine because it's in my name, right?" I retorted, leaving Brian speechless. Susan watched us with a scowl, but I continued instructing the movers. "That's everything. Thank you."
What's this? There's almost nothing left. You knew I liked that sofa, didn't you?
"If you like it so much, feel free to buy the same one. Oh, and from next month, I won't be paying for the condo's mortgage or living expenses, so make sure you cover them."
What? You can't just spring that on us. As his wife, you should support him until he finds a job.
"Why would I pay when I'm told to leave?"
Brian won't agree to this. Suddenly not paying is ridiculous, right?
Of course, you were the one supposed to pay the mortgage.
"You broke the promise to contribute to the living expenses first. Why should I keep mine?"
You just bought a new car, and now you're saying you can't pay? Don't you think about others at all?
Yes, leaving the house like this, you should at least pay.
Do you realize what you're saying? Aren't you embarrassed to be yelling like this in front of the movers? Realizing they were the only ones raising their voices, they sheepishly toned down.
But suddenly not paying is tough. Can't you cover just a few more months?
"I've been paying the living expenses for over a year now. How many more few months are you planning? You'll have to manage on your own."
Don't be so cold. We're still married. Why leave? Let's live together like before. I'll do the housework. It's easier with me here, right?
"You barely did any housework. Meals were takeout, and I took out the trash, remember? And we won't be married much longer. Don't worry." Look, you were so happy to have him sign this. I showed them the divorce papers with a smile. Leaving the two speechless, I left the house. After the divorce, true to my word, I stopped paying the mortgage. The account was maxed out due to Brian's car purchase, leading to a default on the mortgage. Despite receiving notices, Brian ignored them, continuing to default. Eventually, a lump sum payment was required, but neither Brian nor Susan could manage it. If they had consulted the bank after the initial default, they might have been able to keep the house, but pride got in the way. In the end, the house was seized, and both Brian and Susan ended up with debt and a bad credit rating. Brian's hope of landing a job at an elite company didn't pan out. Now, he's doing low-paying physical labor to pay off his debts. Susan, relying on her pension, had to start an unfamiliar part-time job, but it seems she's being ridiculed by younger colleagues for not being able to do much. Despite this, their debt repayment was precarious, and my ex-husband Brian came asking if he could borrow just $1,000. His previously arrogant demeanor had vanished, replaced by a nervous one. To him, I replied with a smile, "I don't want to act all high and mighty over just $1,000, so I'll have to decline." And with that, I decisively cut ties with both of them. Returning to living alone, I've been feeling less stressed, and recently I've been complimented at work for being more upbeat. Thanks to my softer demeanor, I was even invited to a dinner by a popular boss, just the two of us. It looks like I'm ready to take a new step forward, both personally and professionally,